In order to turn on the Nikon TE2000 microscope system, firstly turn on all of the components using the switches on the wall for the system, along with the computer and monitor. Turn on the PC and allow it to boot up. Turn on the gangplank power switch and switch on the transmitted light control box if it is not already on. The QLED fluorescent light source control pad will initialize, as you can see on its control pad. Finally, turn on the camera at the control box if it has not been switched off by the previous user and allow it to power up. While you are waiting on a computer to load, you can go ahead and load the sample onto the microscope stage. Turn on the lamp power on the control box and on a secondary switch on the left side of the microscope and turn the lamp power up as required. You should be able to see your sample illuminated on the stage and be able to focus on your sample using the focus wheel on the microscope. If you are happy with focus and want to see the fluorescence on your sample, turn off the transmitted lamp, rotate the manual filter cube from the empty position 4 to either the blue DAPI, green FITS, red TRITS or far red Sci-Fi filter cubes and turn the fluorescence lamp on using the control pad. You should now be able to see your sample fluorescence down the eyepieces and adjust focus as necessary or change filter cubes to see other fluorophores. Once you have finished looking at your sample, you can turn off the fluorescence either at the handset or using the manual shutter handle on the microscope body. If you want to switch to the camera port so you can visualize your sample on the computer, rotate the part knob on the right hand side of the microscope from eyes to 100%, left to the monochrome camera for fluorescence, or 100% for the color camera for histology samples. Start up the computer and log in using the command desktop. Once logged in, the PPMS tracking software will start and ask you to confirm your project and account details. Once at the desktop, ensure all components of the microscope are switched on before starting the NIS Element software and allow it to load. The TE2000 is completely manual, however making changes to the microscope setup in Elements will be reflected in the metadata of your images, so correct scaling and wavelength is applied. There are both mono and color cameras in the system, but only one is active at a time, so start by choosing the camera you would like to use. Go to the Acquire menu, select the Nikon DS-U3 control box and choose the color DS-FI2 camera for histology or similar color imaging, or the DS-QIMC for fluorescence images, as this monochrome camera is more sensitive. Starting with color imaging, select the appropriate lens on the microscope pad and manually rotate the lens to the correct position in the microscope body. Select one of the empty filter positions on iPad and ensure the empty filter is in place on the microscope body. Press the green Live View button to start the camera view. You will notice in this case that there is no image visible. Firstly, turn on the bright field lamp and rotate the port position knob from eyepieces on position 1 to position 4 to direct the light to the color camera on the front port. You should now see light in the Live View window. Adjust the brightness of the image either using the brightness control on the lamp control box or adjust the exposure time on the camera to provide sufficient illumination to your sample for imaging. There is also gain control on the camera, but for bright field sample this should not be necessary. Use the lookup tables as a guide to image intensity. Once you are happy with illumination, use the focus controls on the microscope body to bring your sample into view. Note that the live view is not taken at full resolution, so zooming into the live image using the mouse wheel can aid focusing. Once you are happy with the image, press the Capture Image button to take the image. You will notice in this case that this histology slide image that there is a color tint to the lighting. So to remedy this, move the region of slide away from your sample. Go Live View again, and once you have a region clear of tissue, press the Auto White Balance button on the Camera Setting tab in the software. You will notice the color balance changes from yellowish to white. Now when you go live and return to your tissue sample, the color will appear more representative of your sample, as you can see when comparing the images here. You can save your images by using the Save As option. Always save the files onto the Data D drive inside the User Data folder, sorted by month, and into a folder of your own using the default ND2 file format. When the image saves, you can see the details of the metadata contained within the file, embedding lens, illumination, exposure time, and scaling into your file for reference. Once you have saved the file, you can close without warnings. However, if you attempt to close an unsaved image, you will be prompted to save or discard the image. To change lenses, select the lens of interest within the software. Rotate the lens into position and go live within Elements. You will need to refocus and adjust exposure before being able to record images. The file metadata will record the differences as long as you have matched the software to the microscope correctly. If you want to take fluorescence images, first change the camera section to the monochrome camera within Elements before choosing the filter cube you wish to use, both in software and by rotating the filter wheel on the microscope. Going live on the camera shows no image. Ensure that the fluorescence LED is active by opening the shutter button on the control pad beside the microscope. You should see blue light illuminating your sample in this case with the GFP filter in place. As you are using a different camera, you will need to rotate the port knob to position 5 to direct the light to the left side port. You should now see your sample on a screen in pseudo-color representative for the filter cube used. Adjust focus as before and increase your exposure time to provide sufficient lighting to your image. Once you are happy, capture an image as previously using the Capture button and save the file. If you want the image for a different fluorophore, select the new cube in Elements. You will notice here that the live image changes its pseudo-color, but it's unchanged. Rotate the filter cube to match on the microscope body. The exposure settings for this fluorophore are such that it is useful to compress the lookup table to aid focusing. Increasing both exposure time and gain on the camera may be required if your sample is dim and the LED cannot be turned up any brighter. Record an image as required. In this case, I discarded the result. If you are finished imaging, turn off all illumination on the microscope before closing Elements. When you exited the software, ensure you have copied your data to your storage solution before logging off and turning off the PC. If there is no one booked immediately after your booking, switch off the PC within Windows, then turn off the microscope at the gang plug and at the wall. Once the computer has powered off, turn the PC and the monitor off at the wall. And finally remove your samples from the microscope.